Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Zack Bowen and Addie Hall? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case. I'll move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Zack Bowen was born in Bakersfield, California on May 15, 1978. His father and mother separated in 1990. His mother moved to Santa Maria, California, along with Zack and his younger brother. In 1995, Zack and his father traveled to New Orleans, Louisiana, as part of an extended road trip. They found an apartment and Zack enrolled in high school. He dropped out shortly afterward and started working a number of odd jobs on Bourbon Street. He met a woman named Lana Shupak who worked as a stripper. She was over 8 years older than Zack. She became pregnant with Zack's child in 1997. Zack wasn't too happy about this occurrence. In a letter to his mother, he indicated that he regretted ever meeting Lana. He was going to stay in New Orleans and take care of the child for a short time, but he would never really become the child's father. When his son was born in July 1997, his attitude changed. He was more open to the idea of being a committed father. Zack took a full-time job as a bartender in the French Quarter. It was the first job he ever had, which supplied health benefits. He worked other jobs as well to make extra money. Zack, Lana, and their son moved into an apartment together. Zack was arrested for possession of drug paraphernalia in January of 1998. The charges were later dropped as the items actually belonged to a friend of his, but Zack was embarrassed about the arrest and started to rethink his life. He wanted to do more than work in a bar. At the same time, he advanced his relationship with Lana. He proposed to her by asking her if she wanted health insurance. He sounds like a hopeless romantic. They set a wedding date for October 10, 1998. Not long after they married, Zack told his mother that Lana was pregnant again. His mother was disappointed in him and felt as though he was trapped. Zack and Lana had a daughter in June 1999. This put more pressure on Zack to rethink his priorities. He earned his GED in March of 2000, and in May of that same year, he enlisted in the Army. He went through basic training and was sent to a military base in Germany. He was assigned to a military police battalion. In January 2001, he was deployed to Kosovo as part of a peacekeeping mission. He found the long hours that he worked there to be stressful, and he didn't like being away from his family. In May of 2001, he was sent back to Germany. After briefly returning to New Orleans for surgery on his toe, Zack returned to Germany, but this time his family joined him. They lived on the military base. The attacks on 9/11 changed everything as far as military operations. Zack was deployed to the Middle East, eventually serving in Iraq. He was initially assigned a position that wasn't particularly dangerous, which was embarrassing for him. Other soldiers in his unit were in combat. Eventually, he experienced a good deal of combat. Friends of his were killed, which had a profound impact on him. Zack was opposed to the war and did not like the Army. Lana had become seriously ill when Zack was serving, and the Army would not let him return permanently to Germany to stay with her. The Army did not treat Zack in an unusual way. It's fairly standard for soldiers not to return home in the middle of a conflict. Zack was sent back to Germany sometime later. He developed symptoms of PTSD. He started deliberately failing his physical fitness tests. He wasn't completing enough sit-ups. In 2004, he was removed from the military for unsatisfactory performance. He received a general discharge under honorable conditions. This is a devastating way to separate from the military, much different than an honorable discharge. A general discharge may lead to the loss of many types of benefits and make it difficult to find a civilian job. His captain had actually recommended an honorable discharge, but was overridden. I'm sure sit-ups are important in the military, but considering Zack's combat service and lack of any other disciplinary history, a general discharge seems a little heavy-handed. Lana was not happy about the news. She left their 2 children in Germany and moved to New Orleans. She started dating somebody else. When Zack returned to New Orleans, his children moved in with Lana. Zack returned to bartending in the French Quarter. In the spring of 2005, Zack met a woman named Addie Hall. She had grown up in North Carolina. Addie wandered around the country after graduating high school, eventually ending up in New Orleans. She worked as a maid, bartender, and a waitress. She was considered friendly until she consumed alcohol. When intoxicated, she was confrontational and aggressive. She would attack drug dealers, people in bars. Really, anybody she encountered was a potential victim. She entered into a particular relationship pattern where she would alienate and aggravate her boyfriends. She would become convinced that they were going to hurt her even when they were not. She would preemptively strike under this false belief. Often, Addie did not fare well during these fights. She suffered a number of injuries. The relationship between Zack and Addie progressed. They spent a lot of time together. In late August 2005, Hurricane Katrina hit Louisiana and caused massive destruction and death. Zack and Addie did not evacuate. They actually enjoyed the lifestyle they had during the hurricane. They were not working and spent a lot of time drinking. When people started moving back to the area, they were not happy. From their point of view, the party was over. They returned to work by the end of October. Their relationship started to deteriorate under the weight of their responsibilities. They tried to recapture the magic they experienced during the hurricane, returning to places where they had stayed during the storm. However, they were not successful in rekindling their relationship. Over the next several months, they had frequent breakups and reconciliations. In August 2006, Addie was arrested for aggravated assault with a firearm and drug charges. In September, Zack was arrested for possessing marijuana after the police responded to a fight between him and Addie. As his relationship with Addie continued to disintegrate, Zack started dating a man. This only made Addie angrier. She would routinely ridicule Zack for his sexual preference. Eventually, Addie was able to kick him out of their apartment because only her name was on the lease. Zack was now homeless. On October 5, 2006, at about 1 a.m., Zack strangled Addie in her apartment. He committed various sex acts with her body and then went to work the next day. He told people that she went back to North Carolina. Later, he cut up her body with a hacksaw and put the body parts in various places, like in pots, the refrigerator, and in the oven. Over the next few days, he went out drinking, used cocaine, and spent money on strippers. On October 17, 2006, Zack made his way to the 7th floor of the Omni Royal Orleans Hotel and jumped. He did not survive. In his pocket, there was a small plastic bag containing his dog tags, a key, and a note. Among other things, the note indicated that his death was not accidental and revealed information about Addie's condition and whereabouts. In her apartment, the police found messages written in spray paint, which, among other things, read, "I'm a total failure, help me stop the pain, and look in the oven." Now moving to my analysis. There is no mystery in this case as to who was responsible for the death of Addie Hall. Zack Bowen made sure to remove any doubt about what happened before he made his exit. Here are a few items in this case that stood out to me. Item number 1. Growing up, Zack alternated between being quiet, shy, and isolated, and being outgoing, goofy, and awkward. Almost like he was trying to find a style that worked for him. He wasn't particularly self-confident when he was young and struggled to form his identity. He was low in conscientiousness and high in neuroticism. Item number 2, Addie Hall was very difficult to get along with. She had been in a phenomenal number of physical altercations, many of which were fueled by alcohol and drugs. It is believed that she may have had bipolar disorder. She had what appeared to be both depressive and manic episodes. She was impulsive, irresponsible, and reckless. So here we see another individual who is low in conscientiousness and high in neuroticism. Zack and Addie appear to share those personality trait levels. Also, they were both high in the excitement-seeking facet of extroversion. Item number 3, Zack may have been depressed, or at least he had some characteristics of depression. For example, he appeared to have inappropriate guilt. When he was a teenager, he told relatives that he had made terrible mistakes, even though he hadn't to the best of anyone's knowledge. When he was a little older, he continued to be hard on himself. Every failure that he had affected his sense of worth greatly. In his final statement, he wrote, "I've known forever how horrible the person I am." Item number 4, sometimes this story gets framed as quite mysterious. The apartment that Addie rented was above a voodoo store. I guess they sell voodoo there, or maybe people rent it. It's not clear. I think this is just a way to connect the murders to Louisiana, like to put them in a geographical and cultural context. This feels more congruent. People do this to try to make sense of the murders. But this is not logical. This is like saying if a person was murdered in New York, they must have been struck by a big apple. If they were murdered in Chicago, the wind threw them into a building. Or if they were killed in New Jersey, they were run over by a bad driver. Well, that last one might make a little bit of sense. Either way, a city or state doesn't commit murder, people do. There was nothing supernatural about the case of Zack Bowen. This was actually a remarkably straightforward case. This case was about alcohol, drugs, sensation-seeking, excess, recklessness, and the theme of failure, which brings me to item number 5. Zack's life contained a theme of real or perceived failure. I think this was a major contributor to the homicide. Zack conceptualized his life as a string of failures. In his mind, it just wasn't one shortcoming. It was everything he did. He always failed. A few examples of occurrences that he believed were indicative of failure. Zack dropped out of high school in both California and Louisiana. He had only low-paying jobs. He received a general discharge from the Army, which led to him going back to low-paying jobs when he was hoping for something different. He separated from his wife. He did not take care of his children. And he murdered his girlfriend. The cumulative effect of these failures took an incredible toll on Zack. They eroded his sense of worth until, from his perspective, there was no reason to continue. He would only cause more pain. Here's an analogy to illustrate this concept. I'm going to use the example of a man, but this analogy applies equally to men and women. Imagine a man contemplating a continuum illustrated by a horizontal line. The line has numbers on it, like a ruler. The numbers go from 1 to however long the person would expect to live, so perhaps somewhere between 70 and 90, depending on the person. Society, culture, and individual preferences lead this man to create milestones on that continuum. Each milestone represents something he believes he should accomplish by each point. This continuum exists in the mind of the man. It's something he looks at often. He checks it to see how he's doing. Many dimensions are represented by these milestones: earnings, relationships, children, power, status, personal development, all kinds of factors reflecting the man's values. These milestones are important to him. A few examples of the milestones the man may have. On the continuum at the 25-year marker, there is a milestone for being in a happy romantic relationship. On the continuum at 30 years, the man desires to be married. At 35, he wants to have children. Perhaps the man wants to get a college degree no later than the 40-year marker. So there's a milestone there. Maybe he also has less important goals like buying a sports car by the age of 50 and paying off all his debt by 55. As the man lives his life and he successfully satisfies the milestones, everything is okay. Maybe on some of his goals, he's even ahead of the curve. The problem starts when the man gets behind, when those milestones start to accumulate without being satisfied. First, it's not having a happy romantic relationship. Next, it's failing to graduate from college. After that, he doesn't get the sports car on time. Before he knows it, the man has all these milestones piled up. From his point of view, these milestones are animated. They have feelings. They are judgmental. The man uses the continuum to judge the quality of his life. and all the missed milestones proclaim in unison how the man has failed. Eventually, there is no way to drown out the singing. It's kind of like a Miley Cyrus song was in the background. It's so bad, it can't be ignored. I think this continuum analogy applies in the case of Zack Bowen. He viewed himself as a failure in every way. He caused himself to fail, then he was upset by the consequences as if his bad character caused the failures, like he was programmed to fail. For example, Zack deliberately did not do the sit-ups for the army, and during Hurricane Katrina, he used substances instead of taking care of his children. Zack had inappropriate guilt, and he lived his life in a way to make this guilt appear logical. He was seeking congruence between his feeling of incompetence and his behavior. He brought these two constructs into alignment. He felt like a failure, therefore he acted like a failure. Zack did something that he could feel guilty for, as if it was his destiny. Those are my thoughts in the case of Zack Bowen and Addie Hall. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis on this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.